Today we're going to talk about how to put the polo wraps on your horse properly. Now, one thing, regardless of whether you are wrapping with polos, if you have stable knit bandages to put on, or if you have standing wraps to put on, that wrapping process is exactly the same regardless of what type you use. You always want to wrap across the bone and never pull across the tendon, okay? And pretty much that's the same as when you have to do a wrap of some type or a bandaging of some type on a person. So for instance, if my leg is right here and I needed to wrap it, I know that my shin bone is here. So I'm gonna pull that wrap tight across the shin bone, but back here where I have tendons, I'm not gonna pull tight across my tendons. So I'm gonna do exactly the same thing when I put polo wraps or standing wraps on my horse. So since we want to use just polo wraps, regular polo wraps before we ride today, we're going to show you how to put those on correctly. Now, make sure that your polos are wrapped correctly. That is the first thing. So that if they're wrapped correctly, all I have to do is take this and lay it against my horse's leg. Now I'm going to make sure that my feet are not under his feet. I'm going to start underneath his knee. You never want to interfere with the knee. So it's going to be underneath his knee. And I put the edge right about the middle of that groove that I feel on the inside of his leg, lower leg. Now as I pull a little bit tight in my hand across the front, I roll the roll against his leg. And you want to keep this smooth and even. And then I can pull tight right here. And then I'll drop it down at an angle. And as I come around again, I can pull a little tight right here across the front. Now I want to make sure that I keep these about the same distance. So I want to keep pressure, not extremely tight. Okay, we don't want to cut off any circulation. Now when I get down here to this fetlock, one of the things that you can do, I like to cup the fetlock and then come up the side. Now some people just stop right at the fetlock and then go back up. It's based on pretty much what you want to do and what kind of support your horse needs. But I like to cup that fetlock, so I'm going to come down a little bit lower, scoop and wrap that fetlock right there, come up the other side, and then I'm going to pull tight here as I start to make my way up. Now what you do want to do is to make sure there's no kinks and that your revolutions are about the same distance all the way around. And then I fasten the Velcro. And that's it. Now, back legs. Back legs are going to be done exactly the same way. You're going to start in the same position, but now that hind shin, that bone, that cannon bone, is going to be a little longer than the ones in the front, okay? So if you've got a big horse, you're going to want to get some extra long polo wraps. If you've got a pony, make sure you get pony size, because horse size are going to be way too long and you're going to have a whole lot of bunching in the process. You don't want that. You want these things to fit nice and snug, but not be too loose so that they start to come apart when the horse is moving, or if he rubs his face on it. Now, these are things that I use when I'm working the horse. So it's not something that I tend to turn him out in. Okay, there are certain turnout boots and things like that if you need to turn your horse out with some type of support. Okay, so that's not what the polo wraps are going to be used for. All right, so let's take a look at what it looks like to wrap the back. And I'm going to let you watch as I make those revolutions. Come on back here. Now I like to get his tail out of my way. He already knows that I'm coming for that leg. Come on, put it back down. Now, since he's resting it, I'm going to pull that tail towards me a little bit. Yes. That has him shift his weight onto that foot. Now I can work on it. I can't work on it and get a nice even wrap if it's cocked and resting like this. Okay, so I'm going to start the same way. Now I tend to make a little larger revolutions on the back leg than I do the front leg. But I do want to make sure that I'm overlapping and not leaving a gap. I want to overlap the loop from before. I cup that fetlock, then I start making my way back up. And it does take a little practice to get these things so that they're pretty even on both sides and on every leg. And that's how you wrap your polo wraps.